Hello and welcome everyone. This is ARIRANG News live from Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. Let's first take a look at the stories making headlines at this hour. Will Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo win approval from the National Assembly? Opposition lawmakers ask for the vote to be postponed, but the Assembly Speaker says things will proceed as planned. U.S. President Barack Obama asks Congress to authorize military force against the Islamic State militant group. If approved, it will launch a 3-year military campaign for the U.S. And for the first time, Korean memory chip makers' share of the global DRAM market tops 70% in the fourth quarter last year. Now, a plenary session was scheduled to open right about now at 2 p.m. on this Thursday at the National Assembly, but that process is being delayed as rival parties are still wrangling over whether Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo's nomination should make it to the plenary session or not. Our National Assembly correspondent Park Ji-won starts us off.
The confirmation hearing for Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo is over, and the Assembly vote on his nomination is supposed to be held this Thursday afternoon. But it's not clear whether that will happen as scheduled. The ruling Saenuri Party, which holds a strong majority at the Assembly, aims to go ahead with the vote this afternoon as planned. Speaking at the Assembly earlier in the day, the Conservative Party's chairman Kim Moo-sung urged the opposition party to cooperate and allow the vote to proceed as scheduled in order to avoid a vacuum in state affairs. However, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy party says it wants to delay the vote to sometime later this month. Party floor leader Woo Yoon-gun stressed Thursday morning that, unfortunately, the nominee had fallen short of people's expectations due to various allegations surrounding his past. Woo added that if the ruling party presses ahead with the vote, the main opposition party will boycott it. Although Assembly Speaker Chung Eui-hwa has urged rival parties to compromise on the issue, few are hopeful about the prospects for that. If they continue to disagree, it will be the first major clash between the rival camps since the election of the main opposition party's new chairman Moon Jae-in on Sunday. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye says encouraging innovation in Korea's cultural content industry will spur growth. And in line with this push, the government has opened a complex in Seoul to better support those with creative content ideas and help them move into the global market. Our Choi Yu-sun reports.
Korea's homegrown non-verbal performance, Nanta, recently saw its accumulated audience number surpass 10 million worldwide. The longest-running show in Korea, featuring chefs prepping for a wedding banquet, was created by local actor-turned-producer Song Seung-hwan, who converged his childhood memory of his mother in the kitchen and the traditional Korean beats of samulori. Song, who marked the opening of the government's Cultural Creativity Complex on Wednesday, said he overcame many financial hurdles in the process of breathing life into his idea. The new creativity zone, in cooperation with entertainment and food conglomerate CJ, will cater to culturally creative minds like Song from the initial stages to global commercialization.
컨텐츠의 기획, 제작, 구현에 이르는 가치 사슬 전반을 지원하고 그 성과를 인재 양성과 기술 개발에 재투자하는 유기적 순환 구조의 플랫폼으로 만들어질 것입니다.
Similar to the government's creative economy centers, which support manufacturing and ICT-based startups and SMEs, the Creativity Center inside the new complex will help those with ideas create cultural content that can appeal to consumers at home and abroad. CJ, for its part, will offer assistance through some 80 of its content and food experts and promote the products at its global festivals. After an idea goes through planning and production, the product will then be showcased at the K-Culture Valley, a Korean wave contents park featuring a concert hall and film and TV studios set to open in 2017. While President Park anticipates the complex to build a new growth engine, the ultimate success of the project will be determined once the K-Culture Valley is completed and begins to generate profit and create jobs. 최유선, 아리랑 뉴스.
And now to the latest on the so-called nut rage scandal. The verdict for the first trial is scheduled to be announced at 3 p.m. in Seoul. All eyes are on whether former VP of Korean Air Cho Yeon-ah will face jail time. Kim Hyun-bin has this story.
A Seoul District Court will announce its verdict Thursday on whether Cho Yeon-ah, the former vice president of Korean Air, is guilty of charges ranging from violating aviation safety regulations to pressuring cabin crew to lie to investigators. Earlier this month, prosecutors asked the court to sentence Cho to 3 years in prison for her actions during the so-called nut rage incident. If found guilty, that is the maximum sentence she could receive. The prosecution team pointed out that Cho has shown no sign of genuine remorse for her actions. The former executive has continued to blame the crew for her decision to order a senior crew member to deplane in New York last December, after they did not follow the proper procedure for serving nuts to passengers in first class. The Korean public has been fixated with this case since the beginning. Many see it as the latest example of misbehavior by a member of a conglomerate or so-called chaebol family, who believe with their power and influence that they can act and do as they please. In the past, local courts have gone relatively easy on chaebol leaders convicted of crimes by granting them pardons or handing down lenient punishments. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
And shifting our focus to our neighbor country, the tone and words Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will use in his upcoming statement marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II has incited conflict in Japan. For more, here's our Connie Kim.
A debate is raging in Japan's parliament over a statement to be delivered by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in August to mark the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Last month, Abe indicated he will not use certain terms such as colonial rule and aggression, deep remorse, or heartfelt apology, which were included in Tokyo's 1995 statement by then Prime Minister Domichi Murayama. The country's main opposition Democratic Party has labeled Abe's remarks intolerable and demanded the content of his statement be shared with and discussed in parliament, not just within the confines of Abe's cabinet.
Don't you think it's necessary to discuss the contents of the statement with Parliament for the sake of national consent?
It's hard to pass a resolution in Parliament. We'll announce a statement under our cabinet.
And in a rare move, the new Komeito Party, part of Abe's ruling coalition, has voiced its concerns, saying the past statements were announced after consultation with lawmakers.
The statement is accepted at home and abroad as the basic position of Japan. It's common sense that a consensus is reached within the coalition parties.
Adding to the conflict and confusion, the chairman of Abe's ruling Liberal Democratic Party's General Council, Toshihiro Nikai, said it's only sensible that the cabinet coordinate the upcoming statement with different parties. The international community has been calling on Japan to address its historic past wrongdoings and issue a sincere apology. And with Japanese lawmakers calling for Abe to strike a forgiving tone, analysts say the Japanese leader is under growing pressure to make a heartfelt apology for Japan's past wrongdoings. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
With the threats from Islamic State militants not showing any signs of dwindling, U.S. President Barack Obama has taken a big step forward. Determined to fight the extremist group wherever they exist, the American president asked Congress to authorize military action against them. For this report, here's our Kim Min-ji.
U.S. President Barack Obama has made a formal request to Congress to authorize military force against a terrorist group that calls itself Islamic State.
This resolution reflects our core objective to destroy ISIL. It supports the comprehensive strategy that we've been pursuing with our allies and our partners.
In a televised speech, Obama noted the military campaign is a difficult mission, but said the U.S. is on the front foot and IS is going to lose. The request does not call for the deployment of ground troops, although a separate letter to Congress did state that it will be limited to rescue operations or the use of special operations forces to take military action against the extremist group's leadership. While there's general support for the plan, the Republicans want stronger measures, and some Democrats say the resolution goes too far. If the request is approved, it would authorize a military campaign for 3 years without geographical restrictions. It would also be the first war authorization since then-President George W. Bush sought authority to wage war in Iraq in 2002. The U.S. has conducted airstrikes against IS targets in Iraq and Syria since August last year, leading a coalition of Western and Arab nations. Obama said that although existing statutes provide him with the authority to take these actions, Congress backing would show the world that the U.S. is united in its resolve to crush IS. 김민지, ARIRANG News.
Talks continue into the early hours of Thursday in Belarus as European leaders try to secure a compromise to install peace in eastern Ukraine, where violence continues between pro-Russia separatists and Kiev's forces. The heads of state from Germany, France, Ukraine, and Russia arrived in Minsk on Wednesday with a huge and important task ahead of them. Before the summit, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko made a surprise visit to the eastern city of Kramatorsk that had been hit by deadly rocket fire earlier Tuesday. On Wednesday, more than 20 people were reported to have been killed, including those at a bus station in the rebel-held region of Donetsk. Poroshenko said he was ready to install martial law throughout the whole of Ukraine if the summit is unable to bring about a ceasefire. In the year 2012, where Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Washington's announcement that it's lifting its embargo on Cuba means more than words to businesses around the world. And with business opportunities widening on the trade front, the Korean government is also gearing up to prepare domestic exporters to take advantage of this chance. Our Song Ji-sun has this report.
From accessories and telecom devices to electronics and autos, those are some of the items Korean exporters could soon be sending over to Cuba, a market that is soon to be given a strong boost after the U.S. announced its plan to lift its decades-old embargo. An estimate by the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency suggests that foreign direct investment to Cuba will jump 17 times from the current $1 billion to $17 billion when the U.S. sanctions are completely removed. Seoul's outbound shipments to Havana stood at $56 million last year, while imports stood at $12 million. Kutra says Korean companies could use the Cuban market as a bridge to enter Central and South America, but cautions they should also be aware of the rigid government regulations there, as well as a lack of liquidity among prospective partner companies in the island nation. To hedge against the risks, Seoul is taking practical steps to help exporters explore the new business opportunities. The Korea Trade Insurance Corporation on Monday signed an MOU with Cuba Central Bank to provide $70 million in trade insurance to Korean companies seeking to export their products. In its bid to re-establish diplomatic ties with Cuba after more than 5 decades, Seoul is also offering humanitarian aid to Havana, engaging in a development program for the country for the first time. Earlier this week, Seoul's foreign ministry signed an MOU with the UN World Food Program for a $3 million project aimed at improving food production output and reducing poverty in Cuba by 2017. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
Korea's inflation rate dropped below the average for G7 nations last year for the first time in 8 years. Data from the OECD on Thursday says Korea's inflation rate was 1.3% last year, falling below the 7 major economies' average of 1.6%. Now, this comes at a time when some experts are voicing concerns that Korea's economy may be heading into a deflationary phase. This as Korea's inflation rate has fallen below the G7 average damaged just twice in the past, once in 1999 after the country's bailout from the Asian financial crisis and again in 2006. The group of 7 countries includes the U.S., France, the U.K. and Japan. Those are all countries that have entered a period of slow growth and low inflation as their consumer prices have already stabilized. Now, for years, Korean chipmakers have stayed among the top 5 in the global DRAM market. But for the first time last year, their combined market share topped 70% thanks largely to technological advances and steady demand. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korean memory chip makers dominated the global DRAM market with a share of more than 70% during the September to December period of last year. The combined market share of Korean companies during the period is the highest recorded, of 0.7% from the previous quarter. Tech giant Samsung Electronics held more than 41% of the market, while SK hynix took up a near 28%. They were closely followed by U.S. chipmaker Micron Group. Technological advances were key to the leading performances, says market tracker DRAM Exchange. Samsung Electronics produces smaller products than its rivals. Its 20 and 23 nanometer chips are 1/50th the width of a human hair. Also, SK hynix improved the manufacturing process for its 25 nanometer chips by reducing the number of defective products. Their high performance is expected to continue this year as well on the back of steady chip prices. The global market for DRAM memory chips is expected to increase 13% from last year to nearly $53 billion. As of Thursday morning, prices for DDR2 were traded at around $1.24, down 0.3% from the previous day. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Korea's DRAM Kakao has reported impressive fourth quarter profits. The local IT giant says its profits for the final 3 months of last year were up more than 70% to nearly $60 million, largely driven by strong advertising sales. The strong earnings come after the merger of DRAM and Kakao Corporation last October. Since the merger, the company has rolled out mobile money transaction services and taxi hailing application on top of its mobile messaging service. Now, more people in Korea are reporting child abuse and more reported cases are being brought to justice. Data released by the Ministry of Health and Welfare shows nearly 18,000 cases of child abuse were reported last year, which is a 35% increase from the previous year. And out of that, roughly 9,800 cases were determined as child abuse and flagged for monitoring. That's about a 44% increase from the number of cases determined as child abuse in 2013. Experts attribute the increase to a special law that went into effect last September that strengthens punishments for child abuse. They added that more people have become aware of what constitutes child abuse from increased media coverage and public attention on the issue. The film once captured the hearts of millions and the musical followed the trend. Now it's on stage in Korea and our Im Yoon-hee joins us with a preview today. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
And it's not the first time that we're talking about this musical.
So I have previously brought it in, very briefly talked about it, but today I have a special behind-the-scenes look at this multiple Tony Award-winning musical. You don't want to miss it. Take a look.
Guy meets girl. Quite literally. The Irish street performer frequents a local pub to play his guitar. And just when he thinks he's through with music, a young woman who goes by the name Girl enters his life. The multiple award-winning musical Once has been staged around the world with over 1,000 performances on Broadway alone. And while live music is nothing new, the actors here take the musicality of the whole affair to a new level.
There are 12 actors and over 16 different instruments. So other than the main actors, everyone plays 3 to 4 instruments. And of course, mistakes and accidents are inevitable. For example, a guitar string can pop while on stage, but we have a system to cover for that, which involves constant communication between us and the actors. So the team catches each other's mistakes and is able to cover for them on stage.
It's a tough gig, singing and dancing on stage. So these actors know a good warm-up is key to a strong start. Anything to get their bodies going. But this isn't your run-of-the-mill musical. Of course, they're singing and dancing, but this is once, which means doing all of the above, plus playing live music. This is also the first translated adaptation, so expectations are high. But the Korean Once team is willing to practice, especially since there's no musical conductor on stage to give them the cue. Cooperation between each and every musical actor is absolutely essential. That way, when it comes to curtain call, the show can go on.
The biggest difference between this and other musicals is that we're all playing instruments live throughout the show, so we're responsible for the music as well.
And since there's no director on stage to give us a cue, we designate a leader amongst us, and that person will give us a cue. They may use their eyes to signal, or they may make some big dramatic motion for us to pick up on. And through this, we can follow their lead and play the song together.
이런 식으로는 더는 곤란해 더는 의미가 없어 가라앉는 날 붙잡아줘 더 늦기
Are they musicians, actors, or dancers? It's hard to put these characters into one category. But that's just what you can expect from this unique love story musical, as this is something you only come across once in a lifetime.
And so the lead actress there mentioned that they don't have any directors on stage to give them a cue, but the original director of the musical came before the musical once was launched in Korea.
Right, so he did come to help set that up, and that was because, like you heard in the report, this is the first time the Once musical was translated into a language other than English, and so of course they were very worried about that, you know, the performance, because it is very music-oriented, of course, with this one, relies heavily on the actors, and so he wanted to make sure that they have the actors who can pull off this role, and they were very surprised and they were very impressed by the actors who did come forward, and they feel that the show is in very good hands.
So the movie Once was a low-budget film,
exactly.
Right, and still the musical and the movie, both of them still hold on to this simple approach, humble beginning, I guess.
So this whole Once phenomenon, I guess you can call it, sort of started from very meager beginnings, but it has grown into huge success. Now with this performance, people have been mentioning that it's a more intimate sort of a performance in terms of musical. There are not a lot of stage props, not a lot of special effects going on, but that really contributes to the performance as a whole. So the opening scene actually starts in a local pub, and so to do that, before the show starts, they invite the audience members on stage to buy drinks. So they will set up like a mini bar on stage, so you can go and mingle with the actors, but that sets a very intimate tone, you know, for the beginning, and so that leads into the performance, but that's the core value that they really want to hold on to with this Once performance. They want it to be about the music, you know, about this love story between these two.
Right, and about the audience as well.
Exactly.
All right, thank you very much, Uni, for bringing us this story today. Very interesting.
You're very welcome.
Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Unlike yesterday, we have good visibility today due to the cold air that came down from north, which is also why we have this chill in the air. Although our highs are above 0 degrees Celsius, don't expect it to feel that way because it feels more like it's at freezing. And generally, it's looking clear in most parts of the country due to the influence of high pressure front. Now, that is except for coastal regions of Jeollado province, where it'll be cloudy, and snow is also expected later in the day. Now, cold air will be sticking around until tomorrow, pulling down the mercury down below average. But the mild temperatures will come back this weekend, along with a bout of rain nationwide on Sunday until Monday. Now, let's take a look readings for today. Seoul will peak up to 4 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top higher at 5 and 9 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju gets up to 9 as well. Dokdo hits down to 3, while Mangkeungang is cold at -5 degrees. That's all for me at this hour. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Hyun-kyung.
All right, thank you very much, Michelle. And this just coming in, the National Assembly's Confirmation Hearing Committee has given approval to the Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo's confirmation. Now, with only the ruling Central Party lawmakers in attendance, the main opposition party lawmakers boycotted the meeting. Now, the confirmation will be voted on by the full Assembly, the plenary session, later this afternoon, and we will have more updates on that on our later newscast. With that, we wrap up this edition of our newscast. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Thank you very much for joining us.